Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dog Classroom Podcast. I'm Anne-Marie.
And I'm Amelia.
And today we are going to talk about spring.
Safety
in spring, but of course when we think about spring, we're recording today and it's raining and we know there's mud and dirt and poop.
It's gonna be ugly out there.
Poop and leaves and
garbage,
dead
litter.
grass. And so
anyway,
in the past for spring episodes, we've actually, talked about walking and socializing and stuff. And we thought we'd sort of put a bit of a twist on it today. And I don't want to necessarily say hazards. That's why Amelia came up with safety.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. So we're going to just throw a bunch of spring topics that we sort of troubleshooted a little bit last night and go with those. So obviously, if there's any questions about any of these particularly, you guys can totally reach out if you wanted us to go into more detail, but this is sort of the list we came up with. I think where we're gonna start, and Amelia's gonna try to sort of keep us on task here, is honestly different, I don't want to say things, different, I don't even want to say objects that as the snow melts are sort of coming up, because we have to remember that our yards have had, frozen snow covering them for multiple months now, right?
Right. So this is like the season where we're getting a little bit vat tacky here, but like the stomach bugs.
Yeah, because honestly, there are a lot, and already a few clients have reached out and have let us know there are more dogs that are having periodic, like a few days of vomiting and diarrhea, and they're like, they didn't change the food, they didn't give a treat and so forth. But honestly, all the dogs are getting out and whether walking or in our backyards, but chances are they're picking up the little something that has been frozen for the last how many months that was there in the fall. So what we're going to encourage you guys to do is get out there and do a good cleanup.
Right. And so actually, like on our social media, on our stories and stuff, I actually posted the first day that it was pretty warm. And I said, get out and clean your yard because you don't want poop soup. And
that's definitely what we're getting today. But
because everything gets melted and then the dogs go out and they play in it and then they lick their paw or whatever. And then they get the gastro issues.
Or they're drinking.
Or they drink a puddle.
That's another thing Amelia actually brought up is, puddles can be fresh water to a point, unless they've accumulated with sort of, everything melting. The other thing is, for some of us that still have snow, it's tricky to get out there with the rake and do a really good cleaning, but it's still really important, like Amelia said, is get that old poop that's been in the yard. Another thing is like the leftover grass bits from the last grass cutting you've done, because a lot of the dogs like to eat that. My guys have been picking up like acorns and little bits. So whatever we can sort of get up and out that they're not going to sort of muck around with and explore, then that's a really good pre-spring, spring sort of idea to do.
Yeah, and not everybody, obviously, like you can't go and clean everywhere in your neighborhood, but if you have a backyard that you're just kind of letting the dog out to go and do their own thing, then getting out there and cleaning it up is going to be important, because you have like snow mold, like you said, old twigs and grass and whatever, like things that have just been collecting bacteria, and we don't necessarily want our dogs to eat. The other thing that I always encourage people to do around springtime is to check their fence, because the ground gets soft.
It shifts.
Everything shifts, and if your dog can get under there, they'll get out. That is a safety hazard. And then also any damage from like heavy snowfall over the winter, like something's leaning and now there's a gap or whatever.
Absolutely.
Some animal has made a hole in your fence or... so getting out and checking that, if we're talking about just like your own fenced yard.
Property,
when you're out walking, so maybe you have like a shared yard or you're, just in the neighborhood, you just need to be more aware that these things are going to be melting out of the snowbanks, that, we know that walking around, people are littering, people are not picking up after their dogs in the winter, and all of that is going to start melting and coming out onto the sidewalks. So just us as the owners, like not texting, not...
being more like, definitely being more in the moment. Because the tricky thing, even, we've had a few clients is, the dog's off in the hedge mucking around, and sure enough, they come out of the hedge with like a mouthful of something, and the owner's like, oh, where'd you get that? And then it turns into this whole thing. So it's just about, excuse me, paying a little bit more attention to where they are with all this stuff. All the stuff down and around.
And like the birds chopping things, and now it's easier to see because there's not all this snow. So I know like if they pick up like a bone or something, like yes, you want to brush up on your leave it. You want to make sure that, you either have them on leash if they are a dog who gets into everything and eats all the disgusting things they find. Or that you're practicing your leave it, or that you're just, being present, being more aware. Paying attention to where you're going to, because there's going to be some areas of the city where, we know that people go and let their dogs run around and don't clean up after them and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So we want to just be aware, make good choices, practice any of our training skills that we need to for picking up stuff that we don't necessarily want them to have.
Yeah, perfect.
So what about I know we've talked about it in the past, but everybody comes out of hibernation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and this is in the past, like some of the walk, when we were talking about spring, we were really focusing on the fact that a lot of people have hibernated with their dogs over the last few months, and now we sort of get excited about the warmer weather and everybody's coming out, and our dogs are like, oh my gosh, where did all these people and other dogs and everything come from? Because then, I don't want to say wildlife, but then there's more squirrels.
There is,
and the birds are coming back, and I noticed the crows are already following me around.
Here.
Yeah, the geese are here. The geese poo is here.
Also a hazard.
Yeah, also a hazard. So again, it's about being self-aware about the situation. So Maya and I and Steph went to Wishart. So, and again, it was about us trying to dress properly. Was it muddy? Was it wet? Was it icy? You didn't quite know. And then what were the expectations for the dogs? Are they going to be able to go off the path or move through there? So it's also that. But again, it's, again, if I'm thinking about going down to the waterfront on a Saturday, beautiful afternoon, are there going to be like people everywhere? So maybe it's okay to slowly introduce and get back into it. And I think it's also important for us as well, just to remember, some of the walking skills and be aware that our dog will be more distracted.
Right.
Because even though we've possibly visited those locations throughout the winter, there hasn't been as much activity.
Right, and we also have to pay attention to like the people that have hibernated all winter. They haven't been walking their dogs. Their dogs may be more reactive.
Right.
And we need to just be aware of our surroundings again. So picking
so not
like
only
a
are we
time.
focusing on our own, we're also focusing on other people. Yeah.
So things that come with safety with that. I know we briefly talked about like maybe more dogs escaping from the yards, or maybe more people taking their dogs out off leash where they shouldn't be. So just having your head up, not being super distracted.
Yeah, being aware definitely of the environment, and being aware of the environment, and we talk about this with dogs, is it's smells, it's also sounds, because I just did a webinar for the reactive guys on
sound sensitivities.
Because the thing is, again, they haven't heard these sounds before for the last few months, and not to say we're getting thunderstorms, but those are coming, and the fireworks, and the more we're out, the more sounds they experience. So don't only think of what you're seeing, think about what the dog is experiencing in the environment.
Yes, because everything is going to be slightly changing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's where you get into, okay, if you know your dog is scared of thunderstorms, don't wait until the thunder is happening to call your vet and say, my dog is freaking out.
Right.
Maybe think about getting, a Daptil undershirt, calming care, some things to start. And then, talking to your vet about, I might need some medication for my dog when the thunderstorms and the fireworks and all that start.
Yeah.
Something to think about now, so that it doesn't become a hazard when they're trying to dig their way out of the house or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of the mud and you guys going out, not knowing what to wear and all that.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about, like, should your dog wear, like, a slushy suit? Should you, like, can you handle their paws if you have to wipe their paws before they get in the car or before they come back into the house? So there's some things that we can consider related to our dogs and the weather as well. And we were talking about, like the poodles, how they collect all the sand in their fur.
Yeah.
And so why don't we, gently recommend that people revisit handling paws.
Anything but biting me game, yeah. Because already with the rain, bringing out towels, drying them more, and even, a lot of people during maybe winter were sort of drying their feet off, but now we're talking about mud here, right? So it's a little bit more substantial. So making the dog more comfortable. So already what I'm doing here is, I know Maui's a little bit busy moving around, but why not grab a lick mat or a handful of treats and just be feeding them or giving the lick mat while you're working through the feet? Because what I always like to say is that if we put a bit more effort in the first few times we do it, it makes the latter part way easier. So think of it as, the first few times you're cleaning the paws, take, 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then eventually it'll take you 30 seconds. It'll take you 30 seconds because you've put a bit of the training, the dog's comfortable with it, and boom, you can just whip it off.
Yeah, and I've actually seen, like, there's those things where you can, like, stick their paw in it and it's got water in it and whatever.
Yeah, I thought I saw those before.
Honestly, like, if you just have, like, a little bucket or a kiddie pool or something and train your dog to step into it, way easier than trying. Like, you can think of easier ways to do certain things, and then all you have to do is desensitize to coming at them with a towel and wiping.
But same about when we talked with winter, because I had bought Bee and Maui those slushy suits, like, they're, like, substantial.
Yeah.
They're like, like it's covering the whole body and it's thick Velcro. Like, it's a task in itself to put those things on.
Yeah. So, I mean, you pick which one thing you want to work on. Do you want to teach your dog to wear the slush suit and it's going to be tricky?
Yeah, or are they going to be a bit muddy and wet? So,
yeah, you just kind of have to pick one.
Yeah, I guess so.
But again, we're getting out more, and when we're outside and things are defrosting, and then we have bugs.
Right. Okay. So
bug spray, mosquitoes.
Right. Do you want me to?
I want you to go off on that.
You want me to go off on that? One thing, I want to go backwards for a sec because I know we had a little bit of a list, but I'm finding more that, it's even happened to me and happened to some clients where the dogs go out, root around, and they come in and all of a sudden their face is swelling, right? So we don't know what they get into sometimes. Like, who knows what they're doing back there, especially us, with people that have fenced in yards, or even if the dog's tied out and we're not necessarily watching them 24/7. So just be aware, like, are they sticking their face in anthills or wasp nests, which are coming up, or, well, we all know the mosquitoes and the black flies are coming, and already getting lots of questions about tick meds.
Okay.
So let's just chat about that for a second. The thing with ticks is they say they're active when it's consistently 4 degrees plus. So we're starting to see those temperatures. I know over the last few weeks we dipped a little bit here or there, but they are starting, and usually we're starting to see them a little earlier from years past.
Right.
Because again, already people are asking to start.
Because it hasn't gotten cold enough to kill them, so they're just kind of coming out.
Yeah, so they are dormant to a point, right?
Yeah.
But they are starting to come out. So you should be getting
starting your tick meds.
And getting organized with that. Some tick meds do have different, I was thinking, was it Advantix or something? I think they quoted on their package about helping, like, mosquitoes or black flies. But that's the other thing. If they're going to be spending long periods of time outside, invest in something. So common sense is dogs should not be having fly dope or anything that has DEET in it, because if they lick themselves, it's toxic. So you're looking for anything natural, right?
Okay. So when we're talking about natural things, here's my thing about natural is they can make whatever claims they want, right? Because it's not necessarily regulated when it comes to our pets.
Right.
So they could make literally a jar of water with some essential oils in it and say, this is tick spray.
Yeah.
And it could be actually an oil that's harmful to your dog. And, you have to be very careful with the natural things. But what we're looking at is, a spray that has something that has been proven and is safe.
Yeah.
So like if you use, I know you have that like citronella bug spray or whatever.
I did have that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, but I found...
Yeah, is it effective? I don't know.
It didn't work that great. I honestly found a few products in the stores now that are DEET free, like human DEET free.
Like the children bug sprays
and I always go children because I feel like it's softer, less chemical. Yeah. But I have used a few of those products on the dogs. And in talking about putting products on, normally what I'll do is spray like the groin area where there's less hair, armpits, but you never want to spray your dog in the face, right? You put a bit on paper towel and then you just gently rub around here.
Yeah, but because how many dogs are scared, right? You come toward them with an aerosol,
but that's the last
them.
thing you need to do is get it in their eyes or anything, and then it's turning into another major issue.
Yeah.
So, you know, the pet stores have their products and stuff, but basically ask questions, do a little bit of research. There are so many products on the market, and we aren't going to sit here and promote one product over the other. We're just going to ask you guys to research. Same with tick meds. Yeah. I personally feel that, and I feel this even in human medicine, anything that is prescribed from your doctor's or vet office is a little bit more potent, heavy duty. The thing is, when you buy things over the counter, they just aren't as strong, right? Because stronger medications have to be prescribed. Right. So when you're getting a prescription tick med, then obviously it's a little stronger and possibly works better, whereas some people will say the one they got at the pet store is fine. But, and again, it's just, you know, be aware of the product that you're buying and the efficiency of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is like lifestyle too. Like you and I couldn't get away with, you know, I don't know, some like what those tick collars or whatever that they have. Like we're outside too much. Our dogs have a lot of hair. Yeah. We're doing a lot in the bush in the summer and the springtime. And like if your dog is just kind of like hanging out in the city, hanging out in the backyard, like yes, there are still ticks. There are.
Yeah, and that I honestly feel like even where we are, that there's actually more of an issue with deer in the city than we're on the outskirts a little bit. But everybody focuses on deer, that deer don't go into my backyard. I have a fenced-in backyard. They don't realize that the migrating birds carry the ticks and they fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that a lot in the city. Yeah. So, I mean, the efficiency and the potency, I guess, will depend on what you do and sort of your lifestyle, and you find something that works for you and your dogs. Yeah. Again, we talked about like some of the different meds have like heartworm stuff in them for if we're traveling.
Yeah, some have heartworm now and do deworming. Some just do flea and tick. You know, so my suggestion is to discuss with your vet what you need or what works best for your dog. For sure. Yeah.
I think that's a good general with the ticks and the fleas and the worms and all that. Like spring is the time for that. Yeah. Talk to your vet about it and figure out what's going to work best for your specific dog. Yeah. Let's talk about seasonal allergies.
Yeah.
So there's allergies, like there's, you know, everyone thinks their dog has like the food allergy and whatever, and sometimes it flares up. Sometimes it can be seasonal. Sometimes they can be allergic to, you know, the snow mold or the grass or pollen or whatever it might be.
But I think as the tricky thing is, yes, figuring it out. And I think as your dog gets older, you notice a pattern. Yeah. Right? Because I know a lot of the time, you know, me as a vet tech and working with the vets, they're trying to ask the clients, okay, did you notice your dog is more itchy or irritated in the spring? Or is this more of when they eat certain things? Or is this more of a winter thing? So yeah, I totally agree with you there. So maybe the thing is, if you have noticed every spring that your dog, you know, sneezing more, itching, usually it's itching, redness more, be a little more proactive and think about what you're going to do now, or think about last year what worked and sort of get a jump on it, instead of, you don't want to wait, you know, till your dog is, you know, has a bunch of sores and they're scratching and they're irritated and everything is honestly a little bit overwhelming. Why not sort of try to, like precursor is figuring it out now, or figure out what you're going to do if it starts.
Right, and you just did first aid seminar, and you talk about like having allergy meds. Like, you don't know if your dog is allergic to a bee sting until they eat a bee and you find out.
Yeah, my thing is you always have Benadryl. It's in your purse, it's in your first aid kit, and you have dosing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's usually the safest thing for dogs. And I know as a vet tech, emergency, first thing, if they're, swelling, we don't know if it was a bug, we don't know if they gotten bitten by something, that sort of thing. Then you need to have that, because that's the first thing that your vet's probably going to recommend.
Yeah, and I remember, I think you did an episode with maybe Dr. Jess where you guys talked about all that stuff, all the first aid type things, like the skunks and the porcupines and all that. So we're not going to go into all that stuff again, but just the very basics of, having your allergy stuff ready to go if you notice that your dog has allergies.
Yeah.
And then last thing that was sort of on my list was, again, we're kind of talking about backyards, but a lot of people are just sort of letting their dogs out more and they're doing their own thing. Having plants or like toxic, what I found a lot was like lilies are toxic.
Yeah, they are. Especially for cats, actually.
Yeah, a lot of it was cats.
Yeah.
So there's different plants, like making sure if you're gardening that you know what you're putting in your garden and that you know that it's not going to be harmful to your dog if they do dig it up or eat it or whatever. Because
I think the problems that people face in the backyard is they want to have a beautiful garden, but the dog shares the space. The dog doesn't quite understand that they want this part to be pretty, and the dog thinks it's more fun to chew on them and dig them up. So maybe that's where little fences, but I honestly agree with Amelia. If there's any chance that any of the plants that you have are possibly toxic, I wouldn't have them.
Yeah.
Yep. And even like different planters, right? That people have.
Because they can fall down. Like
exactly. Blow, that sort of thing. Yeah. Seeds are falling, that sort of thing. Yeah. I actually never thought of that. Not to say avid gardener, but the thing is, I think, one spot we just put a little bit of flowers that the dogs aren't really interacting with, but sometimes, they're curious and something new to sort of play with. But that's a good point, is maybe planning your gardening based on where the dogs or cat, let's even throw the cat in, because a lot of times, if your cats go outside, they're up and around and everywhere, but plan that based on, are they going to have access or could they get access?
Right.
Yeah.
And even the things that you're bringing inside your house, like lots of people like to have the plants inside. And again, if they could get into them, then we need to have some management. The other thing that I like to recommend is put the poison control number somewhere in your house.
Yep.
Put it in your first aid kit, put it on your fridge, put it in your phone, whatever.
Yeah.
Because poison control deals with pets too. So
there is a specific poison control pet line.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's all they do is, I think, dogs and cats.
I feel like I've had to do that before when Stark was a baby.
Yeah?
He used to eat stuff.
Yeah, but I think, not to say Stark's old, but like in the last 5 years, there's been this specific hotline. Yeah, absolutely. That should be part of the first aid kit and phone numbers that you have, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So why don't we summarize a little bit, because obviously there's lots of different things that we can get into for springtime hazards.
Yeah.
We've covered some of them.
Right.
But
so main thing Emil's talking about is backyard, try to clean everything up, watch what they're drinking and eating, right? And if we're out there mucking around, we know a little bit as to what's out there. But remember also when you're walking them, like if they're over here and over there and in somebody's yard and under their hedge, like they're picking up this stuff, definitely revisit leave-its as far as doing them outside. Right. To me, that's a skill. Yeah, it's great to have inside in the kitchen, but please do it outside, because we know they're picking up stuff. And the thing is, if you're trying to pull it out, we don't want them eating it.
Yeah.
Get ready as far as health concerns. So we talked a little bit about allergies and being aware if your dog has had allergies in the past, or even if they're puppies, because I find puppies are more sensitive, like kids, to bug bites and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So be aware, because they have a tendency to flare a little bit more.
Ooh, Google what black fly bites look like so you don't panic.
Yes. Okay. Because that's... because people have brought dogs in for these little welt things, and it's like, you know what, it's a black fly bite because of the mark.
They do look very scary on dogs.
Yeah, they do. Get ready for, if you're giving tick and flea meds, get ready. Get those organized, because chances are you're starting in the next week or two, for sure. And where else did we go? Remind me.
We did a lot of backyard, a lot of walking, the puddle drinking, like bring water with you if it's hot. Some of us are like, ew, dogs are gross, they drink puddles, but
the other one is different locations that you're going to. Not only be aware of, the ground and different footwear we're wearing, where the dog's walking, but also be aware of the different sounds, smells that your dog probably hasn't, been around for the last few months. So just changes in season, basically, is what we're asking you guys to be aware of.
And realizing how that impacts our dogs. Because I feel like sometimes we don't fully appreciate that, like, they're experiencing things very differently than we are.
Yeah. But again, we're older now. How many years have we had spring?
Right.
Where the majority of our dogs aren't living, 20, 30, 40 years. So it can still be pretty new for some of the younger ones. So, don't set expectations. Just be aware and go with it. But I think a little bit of preparation helps. Because like I said, most of us are sort of itching at this point to get out and get going. So just be a little bit more self-aware of what the dog's experiencing and the changes. Like even, the walking skills, go back to a bit of basics, go back to honestly doing that training outside.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck all the time with just indoors, because we want to be social. We want to take them places. So let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
If you have any more questions on this topic, or you want to hear more about that, you can always get in touch with us. You can find us on our website, thedogclassroom.com, or on social media @thedogclassroom.
Thank you.